Hi everyone. I know my hair needs some help and I have no makeup on. I'm still not feeling 100%, but it is what it is, and I thought I would get on here and make this video. Now, I was talking with a friend of mine about something that has nothing to do with what I am doing today. And it occurred to me that I never really explained to you guys on why I even wanted to start cooking. And again, this had nothing to do with what we were talking about. It just dawned on me randomly. So I would have to say it goes way back when I was probably born. That's probably a good place to start. My mother was a teenager when she had me, so my grandmother is like, well, you're gonna finish high school and, you know, that type of thing. She told my mom that she would watch me. In turn, my mom was gonna graduate and then went off to work, so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, my mom's mom. So during that time, they didn't have a lot of money, my grandparents. So my grandmother just kind of threw things together. My grandfather would normally get off work at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's when he would have like his late lunch, early dinner. And I got to shop with him, and I got to see how to shop on a budget, and I got to improvise on ingredients that you may or may not have, and you either don't have the time or the money to go to the store and pick up the missing ingredients, so you improvise. And that's where I got, I mean, at that time, because I was so young, I thought, well, you know, everybody's like this, everybody cooks like this. And I never realized until I was older what a necessity knowing how to do these things, having the time to do these things really is. And it wasn't until after I had my daughters that I kind of wanted to bring all that back. Something happens when you have kids and you don't think about it when you're younger. You don't think about it, excuse me, in your 20s. You don't think about it until after you have kids, that the things that you had that are positive, you want to implement in your children's lives too. And I think what we fail to miss when we have kids is we focus more on the things that we didn't have to give our kids than the things that we actually did that they could benefit from. And cooking was one. Cooking was not just about, you know, making a meal, but it was more than that. It was about conversation, and it was about finding what will work. And if this doesn't work, this probably will. And it's about budget. It's about I can't think. I'm sorry. My stomach is so upset right now that I am being distracted by my stomach and my cat, who thinks that when she's in the kitty litter box, she has to dig a hole to China. I don't know if your cats do that, if you have cats, but my cats, both of them, they like to dig forever and ever and ever. So anyway, getting back to what I was initially saying is that it teaches a lot about what can you do on a budget, and feeding a certain number of mouths for a certain number of dollars. And sometimes the dollars it doesn't stretch. I'm sorry. The dollars sometimes don't stretch. And what are you going to do to improvise is basically the idea. So I'm not a trained cook. I never was classically shown. Of course, my grandmother was very old school in the way that she cooked. A lot of a lot of from scratch meals. So you could say that a lot of my things that I've learned, technique, I guess, came from her. And then a lot of everything else just came in from instinct. The earliest recipe that I can think of was horrible. It was horrible. My grandmother was making something. I can't even remember what it was. And I remember I was very young, and I can't tell you about how old I was, but I was waiting for Sesame Street to come on, if that tells you any idea of about the age I was. And my grandmother's like, Heather, what would you like to make? You know, you can make whatever you want to. And so I'm like, I'm going to make a sauce. I mixed mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup, relish, Worcestershire sauce, and probably like a whole bunch of beef bouillon cubes together. And I thought that was fabulous. It was atrocious. Everybody choked it down because I was so proud of it, but it was pretty bad. And that night I went home sick because I was so proud of it, and I honestly didn't understand why everybody loved it, because it was not feeling very good on my stomach at all. So that was probably my first touch with just being absolutely creative, like with nothing held back. Yeah. We all paid the price for it, but you know, my grandmother is just like, this is so delicious. All I have to say is that woman was something else to be able to tolerate that and have me convinced that she absolutely loved it. It was interesting. But it wasn't until after I had my kids that I really was like, you know what, it's time that, you know, I got to the basics of things and showed them a few things on how to do things and how to stretch a dollar and, you know, how to make this work. And before my grandmother died, my mother and I were talking when she was sick about, like, how did she make these things? How, you know, what was, I got hiccups, I'm sorry. What was the things that she put into things? And my mom would ask me, simply because I spent a lot of time with her and that she showed me sometimes on how to make things. And to this day, I can't. I can kind of remember certain ingredients, but went with her were like all these family recipes that we enjoyed. My arm's getting tired, I'm sorry. So, yeah, it's a necessity, I think. And I think gone are the days, and if some of you remember this, I'm going to be showing my age here. Home ec classes in the high school era, middle school era, those are gone. And kids today don't really understand what home ec was. And if you're new to my channel and you're in that generation where you're not really sure what home ec was, basically they taught you how to sew. They taught you the basics of cooking. They taught you how to make things, you know, on a budget. And the home ec teacher that I had when I was in high school, she also taught us how to sign a lease, what to look for when you're looking for an apartment or a house, how to make out checks. And I think we have gone to the wayside on all that. And I think it's really important for kids to know, because everybody today is like, you know, on their debit cards or on their smartphones, and they even pay for their coffee by just using an app. And I think, don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that might not be the smartest sometimes. I think these apps that say that they're so secure, And these debit cards that say that they're so secure and everybody's using them, I think we're running into a problem with security with these things. So learning how to balance a checkbook, learning how to even write out a check. It sounds old school, but it may be what we need for this younger generation to actually see the material dollar and what it amounts to, and to see that you can get a roast chicken, you can cut it down and have your own boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and save so much more money by doing so. You can, if they get their hands in it and it's a tangible thing, it's a lot more, they're a lot more receptive to retaining that information than if it's just a bunch of numbers that goes on a plastic disc like a card, or it's just an app that you download on your smartphone because everybody else is doing it. It's so convenient. It's so convenient that convenience is probably going to cost us our security in the long run. And I think that if we get back to home ec classes, if we get back to making our own food instead of going to restaurants or going and depending on fast food joints that are not healthy, I think economically, the more financially responsible we can be. And I firmly believe it starts with cooking, because you save so much more money and it's so much more healthier. I mean, granted, you have to weigh your options. There are some things that are just going to be more expensive than others. And that will be like a whole other video for another time. But basically, this is where my story began, was in the kitchen at my grandmother's house. And I wouldn't trade those years for anything. It taught me a lot. And I think if we focus more on the things that we had that were positives in our life when we were younger, and we pass them on to our kids, the better we will be in the long run. So until tomorrow, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe to me if you haven't, and give me a thumbs up if you want to. Leave me a comment in the bottom if you have any questions. Erin and I will be doing a couples video, so you can shoot me your questions at either my email or down below, and I'll give you all that information in the description. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.